In the tranquil village of Leora, nestled in a secluded valley surrounded by misty hills, life moved with the unhurried rhythm of nature. The villagers were simple folk, bound by old traditions and whispered tales. Among them was Elara, a gifted watchmaker, whose delicate hands repaired the intricate mechanisms of time itself. Elara was not like the others. She was quiet, with a sharp wit that often left those around her at a loss for words. She had a beauty that wasn't flashy but subtle, like the first light of dawn. Yet, despite her talents and beauty, she felt a void in her life, a sense of longing she couldn't explain. Her father's shop, filled with clocks of all shapes and sizes, was her sanctuary. Each ticking second was a comforting reminder of time's constancy. But for all her skill in mending timepieces, she couldn't mend her heart, which seemed to ache for something just out of reach. One day, while cleaning an ancient clock, she noticed a small engraving inside the mechanism: "Seek eternus, and find the rhythm of the heart." She frowned, puzzled by the cryptic phrase. That evening, curiosity tugged at her as she walked home. She recalled the old legends of a mystical garden called Eternus, said to reveal itself only to those with a deep yearning in their hearts. Most dismissed it as folklore, but something about the inscription lingered in her mind. The fateful encounter. The next evening, Elara was walking through the woods outside the village when she heard a melody, faint and haunting. It was unlike anything she had heard before. The sound seemed to beckon her, pulling her deeper into the forest. As the trees grew denser, she found herself standing before an ancient iron gate, entwined with thorny vines. The air was heavy with an unearthly silence, broken only by the faint melody. Her heart raced as she reached out to touch the gate. The vines seemed to shiver under her fingers, parting to reveal a garden unlike anything she had ever imagined. Flowers of impossible colors bloomed in harmony, their petals shimmering with an otherworldly light. At the garden's center stood a tree with crystalline branches, its roots pulsing faintly, as if alive. Under the tree sat a man, his dark hair falling over his face as he strummed a lute. His music was sorrowful yet mesmerizing, each note weaving a story of longing and loss. Elara stepped closer, and the man looked up. His eyes, a deep shade of gray, seemed to pierce her soul. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Aeron," he replied, his voice heavy with an accent she couldn't place. "And you?" "Elara." Their connection was immediate, a spark of recognition neither could explain. Aeron revealed that he had been trapped in the garden for centuries, cursed to remain its guardian. Long ago, he had been a musician who fell in love with Lyra, the daughter of a powerful nobleman. Their love was forbidden, and when they tried to escape together, a jealous sorcerer cursed Aeron, binding him to the garden. "I've waited so long," he murmured, his voice breaking. "I thought the garden would be my prison forever, but now you're here." A bond forged in struggle, Elara returned to the garden every evening, drawn by a force she couldn't resist. Aeron's music filled her soul, and his stories of love and loss resonated deeply. Over time, they grew closer, sharing their dreams and fears. Yet, the garden's magic came at a cost. Each visit drained Elara, leaving her weak and pale. Aeron begged her to stop coming, but she refused. "If I stop, I'll lose you," she said, her voice firm despite her frailty. One night, Aeron revealed the truth about the garden. "The only way to break the curse is to destroy the tree," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "But doing so will destroy me as well. The sorcerer ensured that my fate and the garden's are intertwined." Elara refused to accept this. Determined to save him, she began researching the sorcerer's curse. Her search led her to an old hermit on the outskirts of the village, who was rumored to know ancient magic. The hermit listened to her story and handed her a vial of shimmering liquid. "This potion will sever the bond between the garden and its guardian," the hermit said. "But it comes with a price. You must give up the most precious thing in your life." Elara hesitated but ultimately agreed, her love for Aeron outweighing her fears. the breaking of the curse. On the night of the full moon, Elara returned to the garden with the potion. As she approached the tree, Aeron stood waiting, his expression a mix of hope and dread. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice trembling. "I've never been more sure of anything," she replied. She poured the potion onto the tree's roots. The ground shook, and the garden began to wither. Aeron cried out in pain, collapsing to the ground. Elara rushed to his side, tears streaming down her face. "Stay with me," she pleaded. As the garden faded into nothingness, Aeron's body became translucent, his form dissolving into light. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "You've given me freedom." When the light faded, Elara was alone in the forest, clutching the lute Aeron had left behind. Love beyond time. Years passed, but Elara never forgot Aeron. She poured her grief into her work, crafting clocks that told not just the time but the stories of love and sacrifice. Her reputation grew, and people traveled from far and wide to buy her creations. One day, a young musician visited her shop. He had dark hair and gray eyes that seemed hauntingly familiar. As he strummed his lute, Elara's heart raced. Though he didn't remember her, she recognized his soul. "Do I know you?" he asked, a hint of curiosity in his voice. Elara smiled, tears filling her eyes. "Perhaps we've met in another time." As they talked, the void in her heart began to fill. Though their memories of the garden were lost, their love had endured, finding its way back to them. It was proof that true love, no matter the obstacles, never fades. It merely waits, like the ticking of a clock, for the right moment to begin again.